Hi, and welcome back to Mingus on Tech. I'm Ken Mingus, Executive Editor at Computer World. I'm here today with Android blogger J.R. Raphael. We're going to be talking about Google Fi, what's coming this year, and what's new. Stick around. So, JR, thanks for being here. I appreciate it from your undisclosed location somewhere in the Midwest.
Somewhere. No one knows. Not even me.
No, exactly. Well, that's good. You got to keep it that way. What caught my eye was there were a couple of announcements just in the wake of CES in the last few days from Google about Google Fi, which, as I know you know, used to be called Project Fi. And I guess what they're doing is rolling out some rich communication services and a little bit better 4G international coverage. And so I thought it'd be a great time to talk to you for a few minutes about basically what is Google Fi, what do we think Google's trying to do here, how does it work, and why might I, even with an iPhone, be interested in finding out a little bit more. So what is Google Fi?
Well, so technically it's something called an MVNO, which is a fancy acronym for Mobile Virtual Network Operator. And all that means is that, AT&T has its own wires, its own network. Verizon has its own network. Google Fi is not its own individual network. It's just a carrier. It's kind of like we see like Mint Mobile or any of these other ones. They're the same deal. So they're piggybacking off of the existing infrastructure that Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint, the big players, have, and using it to give you a different kind of service. And Fi is pretty different. I mean, what it does is it uses more than one. So it actually hops you between T-Mobile, Sprint, and US Cellular in the United States. And wherever you are, it just automatically seeks out the best signal on any of those. And you don't even know. I mean, you could be driving from state to state and you might hop from T-Mobile to Sprint and then Sprint to US Cellular and back. Your phone just always works. I mean, as long as one of those networks is, providing decent coverage wherever you are. And it just keeps you connected. It also brings in Wi-Fi in an unusual way. It connects you to public Wi-Fi networks that are verified to have high-speed, decent, reliable connections wherever you are. So if you go into, like, say, a mall or a Starbucks or somewhere like that has an open Wi-Fi network, Fi will connect you to that. It'll turn on a VPN, a virtual private network, which just means it adds an extra layer of encryption and privacy so that no one can snoop on what you're doing. And it uses that instead of mobile data. So it saves you from having to churn through mobile data, which you pay for whenever it can. It's a pretty unusual setup. And for the right kind of user, it can add some value to the equation and save some money, too.
Well, I was looking at the FAQ you did, I think, back in December, and it's interesting because, you think of this as like, Google doesn't have its own network. It's, as you say, piggybacking. So it's almost like a reseller. It's depending on the infrastructure that's already out there. And I was trying to figure out, why would Google want to do this? And I'm assuming it's because they're trying to get their fingers into as many parts of the mobile ecosystem as they can, from devices to software to now network. And so, I guess the idea here is that if you want to get some sort of more pure Google experience or some way of saving some money from by moving off a traditional carrier, this is another option. Is price or coverage? What would be sort of one or two defining things that would perhaps pull customers away from a traditional carrier?
I think price and coverage are big ones. As far as Google's motivation, it's anyone's guess, but as far as I can see, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, Google's always looking to do anything it can to encourage people to use Google services more often. And, let's face it, most people hate their mobile carrier. You always feel like you're getting ripped off. There are all these sneaky fees that are getting tacked on, and it's usually just a kind of unpleasant experience. So if Google can find a way to make that easier and give you a way to stay online more often, thereby using more Google services, it's only going to help. And with Fi specifically, one of the benefits is that it makes it really easy to use your data in any way you want. So you can set up your device to be a hotspot. There's no extra fee for that. And you could get your laptop online. You can even order a data-only SIM, like an extra little SIM card that you could put into an old phone or a tablet or a laptop that has a SIM card slot and have that online without paying an extra fee, which almost no other carrier does. Usually there's like a monthly surcharge just for that privilege. But I think for most people, it comes down to money. So Fi at its core charges you $20 a month, which is like for the base service.
That's just a
for
flat
being able
fee.
to,
Everybody pays the $20 a month. Okay.
right. That just lets you make calls, get text, just the basic service. And then on top of that, you pay $10 per every gigabyte you use in any given month. And it's broken down, I think, to like the third decimal. So you really only pay for what you use. And that's where Fi works best for people who use like a small to moderate amount of data. If you're burning through 30 gigabytes of mobile data in a month, it's probably not going to economically add up for you. But if you use, a few gigabytes per month, it can end up saving quite a bit. I mean, you could have a phone bill that's easily like $30 a month for a single person. And then it has some other little things in there, some little asterisks. So like it tops out at 6 gigabytes. If you use more than 6 gigabytes in any month, you won't pay any more. You could use 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 15. At 15 gigabytes, it'll start slowing down your data. And if you want to go back to normal data speeds, you have to start paying again. But again, for most people, you're not going to go over that. And Fi works pretty hard to help you from doing that with the whole Wi-Fi use thing. I mean, if you're in office buildings, if you're in restaurants, public facilities, there are a lot of places you can connect to Wi-Fi nowadays, and Fi does that for you. So you really end up using not a whole lot of mobile data. And then it doesn't tack on any extra fees. Like we were talking about the hotspot thing. Mm-hmm. If you travel internationally, you just pay that same $10 per gigabyte rate. So you are paying quite literally just that $20 per month plus 10 per gigabyte, and then a really small number of just the mandated government surcharges and fees, which don't add up much to it. I mean, I have a group plan, a family plan nowadays. When I was just doing it individually, there were months where I had 30 some odd dollar a month bills, which is pretty unheard of for, a cell phone bill.
Yeah. Wow. Boy, I would love to get back to $30 a month. That's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking earlier because obviously one of the things that we would care about would be like, enterprise users, business users who are traveling, going overseas, and it's seamless. You don't have to add on any special package. We were talking, I was in Spain this summer. To get the same kind of coverage that I have in the U.S. in Spain, I had to, ping AT&T and add $10 a day more. And, those fees do start to add up, although they're not as bad as they used to be. But if you're on Google Fi, basically, if you're in the U.S. and you travel somewhere, you don't have to do anything extra, right?
Yeah, it just works. And there are some limitations, but it's a pretty substantial list of countries. Anywhere where most people are going to be going, all the, I'd say, frequent destination countries, I think it's 100 some odd that they have covered now are in the list. And so, yeah, you just basically, your texting works at no extra fee. And any data you use, mobile data you use, you just pay that same $10 per gigabyte rate. You do have to pay a little more for voice calls. It's still, it's relatively reasonable, but that fee does go up a little. But you can make calls using your number over Wi-Fi or over mobile data. Basically, as long as data, which is I think what most people are using overseas, you're going to pay the same rate. And on an enterprise business level too, the VPN thing is a pretty valuable added bit of protection. We mentioned a minute ago how when Fi is connecting you to a public Wi-Fi network, it'll automatically give you a VPN. But just recently, late last year, fall, winter last year, they also rolled out the ability to have that just always on. So you can go into the Fi app on your phone, flip a setting, and it will just have an always on VPN, which means everything you send and receive on your phone is encrypted. Nobody can see it, snoop on it. Typically, you'd have to have, if your company doesn't already provide that, you'd have to seek out a third-party service to do it. Those can be really dicey to find one that's good and reliable. They certainly charge you a monthly fee for that, and you just never quite know what you're getting. Evaluating a VPN is a really tricky thing to do. So getting one built in, no extra charge from Google itself is a nice bit of added assurance for anybody who's looking to be privacy-minded and has maybe some sensitive or company-oriented data that you want to make sure no one else is seeing as you're sending.
Yeah, well, especially if you're going to be, if the system is sort of automatically moving you from one of the carriers to a public Wi-Fi, obviously that's one of the most vulnerable places you can be if you're, moving data back and forth over a public Wi-Fi that does not have some sort of encryption or VPN or security. So I can understand why, Google would want to build that in and make it part of the, the whole package. Question for you is, obviously this is something that I presume works with Google's phones, the Pixel phones. Probably works very well with Android phones. How does it work, with an iPhone? If I really wanted to take a look at this and consider jumping from AT&T, my current carrier, to Google Fi, is that doable? Am I going to miss out on something because I've got an iPhone, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, you certainly could, but you will miss out on a lot of the kind of distinctive Fi features. And the same is true for some Android phones, too, believe it or not. Okay. It works perfectly across the board with the Pixel phones and with some of the older Nexus phones. And then Google has a handful of other Android devices that have basically been built with Fi in mind, because not all phones can handle that network switching. It's an unusual kind of thing, and they have to have certain technology to do it. So if you don't get kind of one of these pre-approved Fi-compatible phones, whether it's a random Android phone or an iPhone, you can still use Fi, but you'll basically just be using T-Mobile all the time in the United States. You won't be switching. You won't get that automatic Wi-Fi connectivity, and so you won't get that always-on VPN function either. It'll just kind of work as an alternate T-Mobile carrier. You will get the same pricing, that $10 per gigabyte rate and the $20 flat fee thing. And you will get the free international roaming, or fee-free international roaming, I should say. But yeah, you won't get the whole network switching and all that. And the funny thing is, that's actually been something you could do forever. Google just started promoting it and really making a big deal about it and supporting it last year when they changed the name from Project Fi to Google Fi. But that's always something you've been able to do. I've taken a Fi SIM and put it in any number of phones over the years, and it's always worked. But yeah, now Google does officially say that's an option and encourage people to do that.
I wonder, if it would, and I've noticed the way the billing is done, that basically you don't have to sign a contract to do this. You can sort of sign up, you kind of prepay for the month ahead, right? And then you're not locked in, so you could try it out if you wanted to. Find out, again, if I'm on an iPhone and I'm basically using T-Mobile in the States here, I'd need to see if the coverage that I want or need in the area that I'm in, if T-Mobile's there and the speeds and the connectivity that I expect is going to work. But at least you're not committed to something beyond 1 month, so you could try it out, find out if it works, and then either stick with it or cut your losses.
Yeah, exactly. There's no contract, and you're just paying 1 month ahead. And then the way it works is you prepay for the month, and then so you would say, I want to have 1 gigabyte of mobile data. And then if you don't use that, you get that credit back the next month. But still, you're not committed. You could easily give it a whirl, and you're out $30-40 at most if it doesn't work out. But yeah, when people are evaluating it, what I always suggest is looking at the networks, because that's really the question, is just what the network coverage is going to be for you. So if you're on an iPhone or a non-official Fi phone, then yeah, you're looking at T-Mobile and what the coverage is like where you are, where you travel, where you work. And if you are using a phone that has the full Fi support, then you can broaden that a little bit and say, in all the places where maybe you live in Chicago but travel to New York City every few weeks for work. So you look at the places you tend to be, and between Sprint and T-Mobile, and then also US Cellular, does at least one of those have pretty good coverage in everywhere you're going to be? And if so, then it'll probably work out for you, as long as you just kind of have to do the math and see how much data you tend to use each month and what that's going to cost you on Fi compared to what you're paying now. But for people who use low data, it can work out pretty nicely.
Time to break out the green eye shade and a calculator, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in the States, it's T-Mobile, US Cellular, and what's the third carrier? Do you remember?
T-Mobile, Sprint, and US
Sprint,
Cellular are the three right now.
And
yeah.
Have we heard anything at all yet? And I'm going to presume the answer is no, but I'm going to ask anyway because I don't know. Anything about 5G coverage down the road? Is that's going to depend on the underlying carriers, I would presume, before anything like Google Fi would see something like that, right?
I think it'll all come down to the carriers and then, of course, device-specific support. I mean, we'll have to wait till there are enough phones that really support it and enough coverage widely that it's kind of relevant and matters. I would imagine it's just a matter of time till Fi does support it as the carriers and phones do. But yeah, I don't think anything officially has been said on that front.
Right. Well, and as you say, that's going to depend on the hardware and the networks too. So maybe we'll find out a little bit more with Mobile World Congress coming up in a month and a half. Maybe we'll hear more. I'm sure we'll hear more about 5G. I don't know whether we'll hear any more about Google Fi and 5G. Okay. Any other areas of Google Fi that I haven't hit on that we should mention before I let you go?
Well, there are a couple of neat little random perks. Nothing that's going to convince you to use it, but just when you're there, little extra
try me. You
features.
never know.
Yeah, you never do. This was something I wrote a story on computerworld.com just a month or two ago about this little handy hidden features that are there, little extra bonuses. So one is effective number blocking. You can usually do this on Android, at least. You can do it in the phone app. You can block a number. And but what happens there is if somebody calls you, they go straight to your voicemail. And it doesn't ring your phone, but you'll still get the message. They still think they're reaching you. And so you don't quite cut the cord. If you've got somebody who's really bothering you for whatever reason, a telemarketer, a former
Stalker,
interest of some
something.
sort, stalker,
Yeah. Well,
editor you don't want to hear from,
right.
whatever.
Hey, wait a minute now. You always want the editor to get through, but go ahead.
Yeah, you do. So you can block their number directly in Fi, and what happens then is the person calling will just hear a message that sounds like, one of those old operator messages that this number has been disconnected or is no longer in service. So you pretty much just shut the door to them. I mean, of course, they could still message you on Facebook or on Slack or whatever else they have access to. But as far as your cell number, any text won't reach you, and if they try to call you, it'll just seem like that's no longer your number, which is a nice little option to have if the need ever comes up.
Yep.
And then the other one, which is something that I actually use, is a built-in call forwarding feature. So you could tell Fi, anytime someone calls my number, my main cell phone number, I want it to ring not only my cell phone, but also the internet-based, landline that's in my home office, or maybe my office line at work, or whatever the case is. And then your phone will quite literally just ring on both those places, and you can pick it up either way. Sometimes if I'm sitting here, I've got a phone, an internet-based line on my desk, and it's just easier, more convenient, more comfortable to talk on that, regular old landline style phone than it is on a cell phone. It also doesn't run down your battery. It doesn't tie up your phone if you want to do other things on your phone at the same time. It's just a neat little feature to have. Or if you're going to be traveling anywhere else, you could have your calls forward to whatever number you want, and a nice little option to have there. I think those are, I would say again, like little things. I think the no fees and the no contracts are probably what'll impact people more often. But you never know when you're going to need to block a number, or when you want it to your number to ring in an additional place.
Exactly. When you're trying to avoid that editor who's yelling at you for something, like something on deadline or whatever, that's the way to do it. Okay, that's really helpful though, because I've seen Google Fi. I've seen your pieces obviously about Project Fi and Google Fi. This news came out yesterday or in the last few days after CES about some additions to Google Fi, and I thought it'd be a good chance, given a lot of attention right now on networks and 5G and what's going on, just to get a better sense for what Google Fi is, what it does, and how it works. All of which I think I understand much better now. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll do it again sometime soon.
Definitely.
Thanks a lot. For now, on Google Fi and the future, that's a wrap.